Do you have a plan for making the investments necessary to ramp up submarine production to the necessary elections? I would just tell you, as part of the December continuing resolution, Congress included $5.7 billion for the department to put on contract for 2 additional Block 4 and 1 Block 5 Virginia-class submarines. The Navy advised members that these funds were required to be placed on contract by February of 2025, yet the department did not put funding for the 2 additional Block 4 boats on contract until April 30th. So do we have a plan, do you have a plan for making the necessary investments to ramp up submarine production to the necessary levels? And what is that plan?
Ma'am, first of all, I want to thank this committee for the flexibility alongside FY25 and the continued resolution.
Well, I would hope you would thank this committee for the funding that it had made. We have made a serious investment. So your first statement is inaccurate. We have focused squarely on submarines, and we now want to know where that is going and what your plan is for the continued advancements to meet production levels and make sure that that is an area that's covered for our national security.
Ma'am, I fully acknowledge the investment this committee has made in shipbuilding, and the challenge is our department under the previous administration squandered a lot of that.
Please, I want your plan. I've had difficulties with the prior administration, and I don't mind calling them out. What is your plan for the future? Can we get that in writing and on paper so that we know where you're going? Because we don't have anything today. We have zip, nada, and knowing where you're going. You could talk percentages. You can talk about whatever you want, but unless this committee sees dollars and cents and where you're going and what your plan is, then we may reconsider what you need to do to go forward. Give us the details.
Congresswoman, we have the details and we will provide
them.
Then
let's have them before we, and my hope is that we could get to it before we go to a markup within a few hours here today.
What is the current cost for what is taking place in California, and how is it going to affect this budget or the budget we're currently serving under? How much are these deployments going to cost for both the Marines and the National Guard? And what training or duties are not taking place because of these deployments? Where in your limited budget, sir, are you going to find, in the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? What holes are being created?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis. The police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground. And because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late mobilized. And President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question.
Are being,
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties, because we ought to be able to enforce immigration law in this country, unlike what Governor Walz did in 2020. There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have implemented. The police chief said she was overwhelmed,
so we helped. If the Secretary is not going to ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies, which is something the National Guard and the Marine plan for. So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the ground.
For budgetary, if he needs to get back to the committee with the numbers, I'd appreciate it, both current and present.
Happy to submit them for the record.
Marines are trained to kill. In terms of domestic policing, our police and our National Guard at the state level, carefully used, but also our state police are used in civil enforcement, and they are good. I don't need any reply. I just am concerned about what those words you often utter actually do in people's minds and change the language we have used since the founding of this republic. So that is a concern of mine. I wanted to go to the General and Chairman, if I could. We've heard a lot this morning about Defense Industrial Base. And this is something I ran for office on a long time ago. We have not made significant progress as a country in this regard. And the places that made things, whether they were machine tools, whether it was composite materials, were left behind. It's one of the reasons for the division in our society. So I am very interested in knowing what specifically and in which accounts, and I hope you can get this back to us within a week and a half, you are going to focus on in order to inject additional resources in the defense industrial base of this country. What will that look like? We are just successful now in helping steel to revive and some of our composite metals. 40 years ago, I wrote a title to the defense bill dealing with strategic metals. Nobody at Department of Defense cared, okay? So I'm interested in which accounts, if you could kindly get back to me on that, and when you say defense industrial base, budget-wise, in which accounts, what does that mean? All right, I don't expect you to answer it now. Can you tell me when you might get that information back to us?
Well, ma'am, you just said a week and a half, so I know the awesome humans behind me are scribbling madly to come back to that. Can I just make a quick comment? You know, I happen to be a lucky guy that served in the private sector for a while, and I ran a machine shop in Texas along with a metal finishing business. So when we talk about defense industrial base, I broaden that out to really the national industrial base. There are certain components that are made in the defense side, but as you articulate, ma'am, many others are made in the small machine shops out around this entire nation. When I talk about mobilizing our nation, I think of that national, not just defense industrial base. What do we have to do to create greater capacity all the way down the chain to include jobs at the local level for those people that build quality parts and deliver on time with shorter lead time and lower cost? And so I have great empathy for what you're talking about, and we'll get back to you just as soon as we can.